Based on the input that you've given us, we've actually flexed a little bit in terms of where we're going to go to right now. We're going to do a few slides prior to quality of place based on the comments we've been receiving this morning. And before we do that, I'd like Jill and, is it Newell? We were just talking at break about their role, what the issues they're facing at Chroma that have to do with employees and attracting people in terms of quality place. So Jill, Newell, whoever wants to, and let me, where's that? Let me get you a mic. Hold on. And if anybody else wants to comment, we hadn't heard much from employers, so I want to make sure we get a balance in all this conversation. Go ahead, Jill.
My name's Jill James. I work at Chroma Technology. We are a company in Rockingham. We make filters for microscopes in a short sense. We employ about 100 people in Rockingham. We have a subsidiary in Burlington, and we also have a sales office in China, and we have a subsidiary in Germany. And we are always constantly looking to expand into other markets, into other countries as well. So we're growing constantly. But we are running into continuously over and over again finding quality employees that can fulfill the roles that we have and that we need. We have some very specific jobs there that we need specific talents, and it's hard to put out these positions and get such limited response, or get responses that once they come say, there's not a lot for me to come here. There's no reason for me to come here. It sounds like a great job, you sound like a great company, but what else in this area is for me or for my family? And it's a real problem, and we end up actually having to, we shift more towards a little bit of an older demographic because they're not dragging along a whole family. They're willing to say, okay, I can sacrifice these other things because this is a better quality of life. So that's great. On my end, though, as a younger employee, as the younger generation in our area, I'm from Bellows Falls. This is where I chose to come back to raise my family. But I'm continuously seeing issues in our education. I have 3 small children. There's not a lot of my friends or my generation that chooses to come back. And as those problems are getting worse because there aren't more like me coming here, it will force myself or friends of mine out, because what is going to keep me here if things are always declining when I can go somewhere else and find possibly a little bit more of a sustainable way to live. So I love this area. I want to be here. I chose to come back here, but from my view, things are bleak. So I'd like, I'm part of this group to try to build a better future for my family, for my children, so that when they are my age, they have the option to come back here if they want to. They have the choice, they have the opportunities that they can choose to go somewhere else, but they're not going somewhere else because they had no opportunity here. But also sustaining what we do have so that it's still Vermont and it's still southeastern Vermont. We're still Windham County. It's a fine balance that we have to try to find. But
thank you for saying. I'll take to any other employers that want to comment or.
Can I just ask you a question?
Sure.
As a young professional in the area who sees the landscape as somewhat bleak, well, as a young professional in the community who sees the landscape in terms of attracting and retaining other young professionals as potentially bleak, can you speak directly to what type of amenities or assets or lifestyle things that we need to, for you personally, that you'd like to see here or developed or brought into play?
Sure. Let's see. Things that brought me back here and kept me here, first of all, is family. My relationships that I've forged here. Currently in Bellows Falls, there are initiatives and things that I love, like our recreation center. We are right down the road from Okemo. We can go skiing. Our school has a great program with Okemo, so that we're able to do these sort of things to, enrich them a little bit. New York City, we can travel there so easily. So those sort of things are things that I treasure that are an asset. But it's hard to justify being here and finding a job that justifies the amount of money that you spend on a college education. So if you want to go out and you get your college degree and then you maybe do another one to find a reason to come back here for all of those quality of life things that we want, it's hard to say, yes, I'll come back because the quality of life is more important, but when you can barely afford to pay off those degrees because you can't find a job here to do that. So our recreational things are fantastic, and they're always being built, and our culture and our arts are always being, touted and showed, but it's hard to use those as a reason and a justification to come back here. We need more jobs that are a little more equivalent to what the degrees that we're going out to get.
Amen.
Does that answer?
So a higher paying
job to be able to supplement the life that we want here. It's not going to be a job that you're going to receive, you're going to get in Boston. You're sacrificing some things to be here, but something that gives you the option to at least have a quality of life financially with a degree that you've already paid for. And by having those, more and more things you're bringing in younger people, you're bringing in families, and then naturally those things sprout up. Bigger recreation areas, more options for the kids. The more we have here, the more people that are willing to be involved, that are educated, they're going to constantly be trying to find more opportunities like this and develop them. But if we don't have anybody coming in with new ideas or new thoughts or younger children to then bring in more and more ideas, nothing will happen. We'll just continue as we are.
Bill, did you have?
Yeah, I just wanted to add in terms of attracting just in terms of attracting professionals from outside the region, especially young professionals with kids who are contemplating having a family. Quality of schools really matters. An investment in schools, I personally believe, is essential.
Okay, good. I'm going to take one more here, and then we're going to go back on some of the content.
Hi, I'm Lucy Tell. I work for Brattleboro Housing. I run a program called Family Self-Sufficiency, which works with low-income families. I don't hear anything about that whole group of people in this discussion. I work with low-income, low-skilled workers, families. They have special needs. They want to work. They need training programs. They need employers who will be flexible with their needs, daycare, transportation, sick care, a little love and a little hand-holding to, they come in with low skills. They need the training. They need some support. And I don't hear anything about that in this group. And that's a whole group of workers that are here they're here. Let's use them.
Thank you. And in that we've only been at this since 9 o'clock, and we're going for 9 months in this process. There's plenty of time. We need to make sure that is in the discussion, and anybody that's involved with that population is encouraged to be part of this process, because often in communities it's the underemployed and unemployed that we lose sight of. And the systems that we have right now, quite frankly, from a workforce development standpoint across the country, are pretty broken, and they're not integrated with economic development, and they need to be. And SEBES is moving in that direction, trying to figure out a way to do it better. Okay. I would encourage any of you who are employers to make your comments known in this process so that we have balanced input. Now, based on the discussion that we had earlier, we're going to, I want to add a couple, we move some slides around because I want to make sure that you understand a couple things that are going on in the economy and some trends. And before I go to these, I just want to make a comment on the statistics that Mark went over in terms of the demographics, the significant loss of young people in that under 20 and that 20 to 44. Remember, we had those dramatic drops since 1990. Okay, if you think about population as a pipeline, if you are the fastest aging population, and there's nothing, I'll be 67 in August. Okay, my wife says the only thing I've failed at is retirement. I've tried it 3 times and it didn't stick. So I'm still having too much fun. But the simple fact of the matter is you have to have raw material coming back up in the pipeline, right? I mean, you've got to fill the pipe because we all have an eventual end in sight. It's called death, okay? And the older a population gets, and the fewer people we have coming up, when we drop off the end of the pipeline and we got nobody coming in the back end of the pipeline, do you think we might have a little problem? Okay, so we've got to, all of this is about balance. We've got to figure out how we balance all these different needs. It's not an easy job. So let me talk a little bit about trends here. There's a very, Mark, I think, went over this statistic, but do I need this now? Is my mic on, my regular mic on? Okay, good. Then I'll leave this out here. Okay. First of all, 90% of all jobs that were created in this country over the last 10 or 15 years were filled by immigration, because native-born population was not birthing enough children. Okay? If you are a community, and by the way, they represent about 15% of our population now, and this is and non-native-born people from immigration are filling jobs at the highest level. Go to the University of Vermont and see who's sitting in the research. They don't look like us. Okay? By 2043, we will be a majority-minority community. We will be, all of us who are white, Anglo-Saxon, Protestant, whatever you want to call us, we will be in the minority. And if you are a community that does not have a burgeoning international population at all levels of your community, you are not going to be, there won't be enough people like us born every year in order to replace those of us who are dying off. So you have to have an approach from an economic development standpoint that looks at the demographic reality of this country. It's actually how this country has expanded and grown all for its entire existence. Immigration has been the heart and soul of what's made this country great. Workforce, from an education standpoint, by 2018, 63% of all jobs will require more than a high school education. That does not mean 4-year degree, but it does mean probably at least 2 years at a community college technical training level. So, and this is the issue Mark brought up, the problems in workforce at the middle skill level. We have a huge demand for middle skill and not enough to fill it. We have lots of people at low skill and a diminishing demand for low skill jobs. So the low skill jobs are shrinking, middle skill jobs are expanding, but the problem is our education system, our workforce development system, is not focused on training people and educating people to where the job growth is at that middle skill level. Quality of place is absolutely critical in attracting people to be in a community. It is the #1 driver for how people choose to be. So basically, they choose, one, where they live, and then second, they want to work where they live. So quality of place is a critical piece of your economic strategy. In terms of manufacturing, over 5 million new jobs are going to be created in this country in the next 10 to 15 years from onshoring of manufacturing jobs from around the world. And they're being driven by 3 primary issues: low cost of energy, rising global wage rates, and a reduced risk for intellectual property theft. And the reason that third point is important is that innovation is moving so fast that product life cycles are very short. It was one thing when your product life cycle was 5 years and you were facing an intellectual property risk, but if your product life cycle is 18 months, guess what? Intellectual property theft is a real risk. And so this is one of the reasons why we're seeing a lot of onshoring. Food security equals homeland security. It's not just food to table just because that's a nice thing to do. People are very concerned about where their food comes from. And so there's a growing local foods trend, but even more importantly, there are huge changes happening in agriculture. We're working with USDA labs now out in the Midwest that are actually working on technology that will enable a Hispanic community, which has high risk for diabetes, to eat oranges genetically modified that will dramatically reduce their susceptibility to diabetes. There's all kinds of things going on in the healthy foods movement and also in very special crops. Healthcare is in a massive transformation. And those communities that figure out how healthcare, whether it's mental health or whether it's just ambulatory care at basic fixing your body as opposed to fixing your brain and your mind, those communities that have healthy communities and also figure out how to welcome people and towards the development of health sciences, the development of new information systems. These are all trends. These 8 major trends are impacting communities all over the country. They need to be incorporated in your thinking in terms of how we look at an economy. Now, I want to talk to you based on some of the stuff that you brought up prior to break that has to do with how an economy works. An economy, now we're going to do in one slide Economics 101 and 201. 100 level and 200 level courses in one slide. Okay? The swimming pool is your economy. The size of the swimming pool. The water in the swimming pool is the capital in the economy. Are you with me so far? And all the people swimming around and playing volleyball, water polo or whatever in the pool are the people conducting transactions in the economy, buying and selling, okay? There are really only 3 ways that an economy works. Number 1, you take water out of the pool, capital, to buy things to bring into your economy that you need. So if you don't produce oil here and make it into gasoline, you have to take money out of your economy, out of the pool, and go bring that stuff in so you can buy it, right? If you don't make clothes here, you got to bring it in. What does that do to the water level in the pool? Lowers it. Okay. Second thing, consumer services sector. This is healthcare. This is healthcare that is delivered to people in the region, not if you're an export healthcare provider where you're bringing people in from outside your economy. Education is, especially at the K through 12 level, is typically a consumer services sector. Government jobs are in this consumer services sector because basically you're taking water in the pool and spending it around with each other, okay? Now this would be like all of us getting in the pool and splashing around with the sun beating down, the water spilling out on the sides of the pool. What happens, and the sun's evaporating the water, what happens to the water level? Goes down. So between the first 2, you are decreasing the water in the pool, right? Okay. There's only one way that you put more capital in the pool, and that is you create a product or a service that you sell to people outside of your geography to bring capital in. It is the only way that your economy actually grows. So we can have the greatest education system in the world, but if we have less and less money coming into the pool, that means we have less and less money to spend on the consumer services sector for healthcare, for education. Does that make sense? So as we're looking at, when Jeff talks about leverage of quality of place, okay, which is a critical, Gordon, you were talking about the arts and culture. When Jeff talks about leverage, it says, how do we leverage that to put water in the pool? Okay? Everything we need to be looking at is how do we put water in the pool so we have more capital to spend on the things we want. And one of the ways is to put more water in the pool is to produce more things here. So if we grow agriculture, especially crops, and we sell them to restaurants outside our region, and that brings capital into the region, right? Tourism is a capital attraction industry. It brings money into the region. Okay, so that very few people fundamentally understand how these economies work. This is why we developed the swimming pool slide. So one of your jobs in the SES process is how do you bring water, fill the pool with water, so you need to build a bigger pool. Does that make sense? Pretty basic. Okay, now, I talked earlier, we talked, I think, is it Doug? Okay, we talked earlier about shrinking the value chain. Okay. In this model, this is where the raw material, this is where you grow the crops, okay? And this is who consumes them. This could be one of the beauties of food to table is that I produce it, I process it, I sell it, and I consume it right here, okay? That means I've done away with the host, the distributor, the processor. This is the value chain, and there are transactions in this value chain. 2/3 of all the profit in almost every industry value chain is in the last 1/3 closest to C. Most rural communities have most of their businesses sitting over here. And that's where everything's on a commodity basis and very, very low value and not high value, okay? So your job is, and I'll take a typical example in Tasmania, Australia. We took an entire wool industry that was shipping all the wool off of the ranches to the mainland of Australia and converted that into a total end-user sales industry by putting designers together and taking all that wool, instead of selling it as a commodity, we turned it into you can go to Casamine Knitwear today and buy beautiful merino wool sweaters and scarves and hats that are sold all over the world in 16 different currencies. And it's shipped out by DHL. That shrunk the value chain, which put them getting, would you rather be getting the dollars the consumer spends, or would you rather be getting the dollars that the wholesaler buys it from you for? Pardon? Consumer, because there's a lot more money. Okay? So you can have increased prosperity if you get to the end of the value chain where 2/3 of all the profit is. Okay? So it doesn't matter whether you're in flowers, whether you're in agriculture, whether you're chroma, building things and putting them together. Okay? The whole idea in today's market, because of technology, is you want to shrink the value chain. So you not only want to put more water in the pool, you want to get closer to C. Okay, those are two basic ways in which you can evaluate whether the choices you make are going to be effective for you. Are they putting water in the pool? Are they getting you closer to C? And because of Greg Noble's company, SovereignNet, and others, you have this wonderful technology called broadband that enables you to shrink the distance between P and C without getting in a truck. Okay, so what I wanted to make sure that as we look at quality of place, that we try to help you understand where the trends are driving and how an economy basically works and how do we get closer to the consumer. Do those things, were they helpful? Okay. Now I'm going to quickly go through quality of place. Basically, conventional wisdom was that if the jobs are available, the workers would follow. But in the economy today, that isn't the way it works anymore. So there's such a demand for talented people, it's outstripping supply, which is what Chroma is facing right now and other companies. Okay? So the trick is, in your strategy is, how do you create a place where skilled workers want to be? That, at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. Because they have choices, and they can make those choices. Okay? So in a quality of place strategy, one of the things you want to do is, in most economic strategies, physical capital and financial capital is what is evaluated and is looked at. In an asset-based approach, you're looking at human capital, social capital, environmental capital, cultural capital, and healthy community capital. All of those things need to be looked at as to how they contribute to a more vibrant economy. So those of you who were talking about, Doug, things you were talking about, Gordon, some of the things you were talking about, are sitting up here in some of these issues. Gordon, actually, you were talking about some things related to social capital. The cultural capital, Gordon, you were talking about. I think the lady back here in the stripe, you were talking about, I don't remember your first name. Dora, okay. You were talking about in the agricultural area, which also can lead to healthy community capital, okay. Environmental capital, because land and natural resources and scenic beauty can be a major attraction. Okay? But you have to look at all these asset classes and not just one or two. Okay? In terms of quality of place. So I'm going to introduce you to another concept in quality of place called knowledge-based enterprises or knowledge-based workers. There is no industry in this world that does not have knowledge-based workers, including agriculture. Okay? Matter of fact, one of the oldest industries in the world, plumbing, Toto Manufacturing in Japan, makes a toilet with microchips in it that connects by broadband directly to your doctor's office. You no longer have to go there for tests. It does a daily check against all the benchmarks, okay? You can buy it for $5,000. That's called technology innovation in an old industry, okay? So what's happening is knowledge workers are the greatest in demand. And creative economies, which some of you, Richard Florida has talked about, creative economies are all about creating places where knowledge workers want to be because they have choice. So they often choose to live in places that provide their families a high quality of life. And to some extent, the job has become secondary to lifestyle amenities. Although Jill is saying she loves all these wonderful amenities, but she's still got to pay off her student loans, okay, and support her family. So quality of place strategies deliver livable communities where community and economic development assets are equal partners for growth. So they are not exclusive of one another. And this isn't a battle between growth and quality of place. They actually work together. The problem is our traditional culture has been that quality of place you have to give up quality of place in order to have economic growth. That is not true anymore. So livable communities, and there are actually about 10 standards you can actually measure what a livable community looks like and acts like. The major growth in demographic movement has been to rural and to urban communities, not to suburban. And they're looking for rural active lifestyle or they're looking for urban active lifestyle. Okay? You happen to have the luxury of have both and in proximity to some pretty large urban areas. Okay, and you have choices of urban areas you can go to. So one of the things that you want to look at is how do you build economic prosperity without degrading surroundings, loss of community character, or becoming a congested tourist trap. Okay, none of those have to be. Okay, so then I want to lead you to, this is a study that was done under Growing Vermont's Next Generation Workforce Report that was done in April 2007 that looked at what people said. The yellow says what they value is either very important or important, and the blue says that they either agree or strongly agree that Vermont offers this. Notice that there is a huge disconnect between around town, what they say they want versus what they think is here. Social capital, which we all claim in Vermont is pretty significant, but everybody that was interviewed gave it much lower grades than what they said the importance was. Look here, now this is interesting. Earning potential. 88% said it was important and only 24% of those interviewed said it was here. Okay, that's pretty darn, and these are people that live in Vermont. Okay, so that doesn't say a whole lot about the earning potential. Okay, so on the wonderful chart that you were given, you have all these balanced labor market amenities, a blend of work and leisure, a sense of place. We have active lifestyle, alternative arts and culture, the environment, creativity and innovation, educational opportunities. And you all got the opportunity to give the region a grade. And Mark has been about tabulating all this while I've been yapping away. And hopefully he's come up with some conclusions here to tell us how you evaluated yourself in this region on quality of place.
done a great job. Not everybody answered every question. That's not unusual. Everybody has different viewpoints. As Jeff alluded to earlier, when we did this kind of exercise with a smaller group, it was very diverse opinions, and that's okay. But what we found with this little survey that we do, it's actually pretty scientific in that it gives us some measures that we can take a look at going forward and say, okay, if this is what people feel about the region, where do we need to make some improvements? So let's look at what you said about the region overall. First question is around balance. That's fine. You gave yourself a score of 3. Next question. Around labor market. What do you think you gave yourself a score on? 2. Correct. Okay, next question. Amenities. What was your score? 4. Okay. Blend of work and leisure. Give yourself 4. Sense of place. 4. Active lifestyle. 4. Alternative arts and culture. 4. The environment. Give yourself a 4 again. Creativity and innovation. 3. Educational opportunities. You squeaked out a 3. Okay? It was really, really close, but you squeaked out a 3. Okay? Now, we take these numbers and we turn it into an overall index, 1 to 100. And the overall index, the number you came up with was 71. Okay? So, as an index, as a place to look and say, this is where we're at and where we would like to be in the future, these gives us some measurements of where we can look and, as CEVEDS goes forward, begin to say, where do we need to put some priorities on making some adjustments? You know, we got a lot of 4s here. In fact, I've never seen a region that gave itself as many 4s as this region. Does that say something about us here, you know, what we think about ourselves or what we think about the region? Or is it actually, perception becomes reality? But there are some areas that we have some challenges in. And they affect our economy. They affect our community. One thing about Vital Economy is that when we talk about economic development, we don't talk about just the economy. We have a very balanced approach. We talk about economic resilience. We talk about human capital. We talk about quality of place. A very balanced approach to those. And we look at it in the context of where's the world going in the future? What are the needs of our businesses? What are the needs of the citizens who live here? And what are the preferences that we who live here, you who live here in southern Vermont, have for the place that you live? So Frank.
Yeah, I just want to give you 5. I want to do 5 minutes just to get input from you on quality of place. Then we're going to go to, Mark's going to talk about the broader region, and then I'm going to talk about what's next in terms of where we're going. So, great.
So I guess the first question I have is, based on that survey, can we get an idea who in the room is under 30 years old here?
Yeah, that's what I was actually.
Great, so we got
Raise your hands. We got 1.
So,
Rachel, I'm glad you're here.
I didn't fill out a survey, by the way.
so the point I want to make is that, you know, we've rated ourselves a 4. However, I think we're skewing that survey based upon the demographic that's in this room. I think if you were to ask the younger people that are here how they measure quality of place, it's going to be different than us who are 45 plus.
Take the microphone over to David, please.
Sure.
And then over the door.
You didn't make it into the 30?
I didn't make it. I'm 34, and I'll say I would never have moved here at 25, and that is because I went to college, I wanted to live in a big city, I wanted that life, but I came back here to raise a family. And I think that is where we get the younger professionals, is that this is a great place to raise a family. But it is not a big city, and, you know, back when I wanted to be out at 2 o'clock in the morning, this would not have been it, but I'm not doing that now.
Sure.
Dora.
I actually have a different question to ask because I also think that the survey is skewed, but I think it's skewed for a different reason. It goes back to the woman from the Housing Authority and what she was bringing up. How many people in this room have an advanced degree?
Wow.
And I think that, you know, we know from the census data that we do have a higher proportion of well-educated people, but it is not representative of the population in the larger region. And there are folks who there are folks that have lived here for generations that are blue collar, have a one college degree, are working, have been here for a long time, have a lot to say. You're not necessarily going to find them coming to something like this. And there has to be a way to reach out to those folks because I talk to them every day. And they're a big factor in Brattleboro, but in the rural towns, they are a major factor. They are it. And so if you're not reaching those folks, you're missing a huge piece. And they have a lot to say. They have a lot of good ideas. They have a lot of historical knowledge because I also am looking around the room since I know most of the people. I know there's a lot of people here that aren't originally from Vermont. And we all love it here, and we came here because we like it. But there's a different perspective from those folks that are generationally, lived here. So, just to sort of bring this back to, because I also am wondering the original data, how many people were involved in that, and what the ratios were as far as what the different sectors were that were represented.
And I want to just change one word from if you don't get them involved to if we don't get them involved, because the said strategy is yours, not somebody else's, and you need to be that. Bill, you were talking about earlier during the break about both of you about education and a unique asset to leverage here. So why don't you comment on that if we can take the microphone over here. I thought you made an interesting point.
I'm a principal at a small school in Dover, and I came here from North Carolina. So Becca and I were talking about kind of an infrastructure that exists in southeastern Vermont that if you were in southeastern Vermont for a long time, you don't even realize is that, small class sizes, the amount of investment that actually goes into schools, the amount of investment in the community in the schools is transformational compared to the rest of the country. And I think it's a very underutilized asset for marketing this area and for leveraging the things that we're talking about that people want to move here for. When you have a small school, you can turn the ship really fast. It doesn't have the large bureaucracy, and so you can make rapid change. You can make it a very attractive place for young families to come and to stay, to return, and to recruit. So, coming from the educational perspective, I think I don't know if it's an asset that can be leveraged or if it's just a decision point that can be, highly emphasized. But I think it's something very, very unique about this area that would be very helpful to get, 34-year-old people to move here.
And yes, Jenna has a point over here. Oh, Becca, did you have a...
Just that education touches all of these pieces, and that we need to have the educational leaders in southern Vermont and the business leaders together in the same room, because the conversations often happen in isolation, and that's not good for anyone. It's not good for the health of the regional economy, and it's not good for families that those conversations aren't happening.
I couldn't agree with you more. Okay, we had Jenna first, then Susan, and then some in the back room here, and then that'll be.
Just a quick point, because I think I'm a little bit of an anomaly. I don't quite meet your age limit, but I'm just in my 30s. I have a job. I have a home. I'm unmarried. And if you ask me why I'm here, I can't give you a really good answer. And so that's why I continue to be in this room. That's why I continue to work with great people like Jeff and Laura and help this economy, because I think it's important to have a vibrant young community and have reasons to bring us here and keep us here.
Dora and Susan.
Susan.
Dora's already.
Okay. Just a quick question. So this index of 71, are we going to be trying to collect this when we go out and do further outreach, or is it? So what are we doing with this index of 71?
Mark?
The index tells us where we're at a point in time. We can do this survey more. We can put it online, have people respond to it. However you want to use it, it's yours to use. The idea is that it gives us a point in time with a certain group that got together, and then we can take a look at it, and we break down into the individual elements and say, where do we need to make improvements?
I think Dora's comment about, I'll get into a few more minutes, we'll talk about where the next steps are and going to different areas of reach, and I think using that survey into the regions themselves within this larger region is going to be important to get some observations.
And we've also used social media and other areas to really reach out to people. That
right.
Every demographic group, every interest group has a different way of communicating.
Yep.
So Gary.
Yeah, in the type of capital that you described, there's a lot of leverageable assets there. Looking at environmental, healthy communities, there's an opportunity to be congruent again with state policy and investment. The Comprehensive Energy Plan has investment and goals that are tied in with the local food system, with renewable energy and energy conservation. And there's certainly knowledge-oriented jobs in those fields. A good example is the SRCC labs. One of the biggest bottlenecks in bringing new renewable energy products to market is getting SRCC certification. And in terms of the tying that in with young folks, if you look at, or at least any events that I go to that involve the Vermont Workers Center, the 350.org group has a good proportion, probably 80% folks in their 20s and early 30s that are involved in those. And it's mission-driven. They're interested in the healthy economies, the healthy communities, and the climate action pieces.
Okay, good. Okay. What we're going to do now, thank you for that input. We're capturing it all with different people taking notes. And what I'd like Mark to do now is go into looking at the broader region that you're part of, and then we'll go to next steps.